In this video, we're going to focus on how we can filter the data, and this data is all coming directly from our database here. And what we want to do is we want to change this. For example, I'm going to select here 5, and then you can see here now the data will start from showing from 5 April, and then here this one 19. So we have a starting and ending point, and now it's from 5 to 19, and we can of course play around with that 22, and then go back to maybe 30, and then this one again, let's say 12. Here we are. So let's start to explore how we can filter our data here on a daily basis. So let's start to look how to filter dates from PHP MySQL database to JavaScript to Chart.js. So the first thing what we need to do here is to note that I'm working on a local host. This is very important because if you don't have a local host, it's not possible, or you can do it on your web server, one or the other. So you cannot have a standard file on your desktop. Next, I have a database ready, and this is just a basic database here. It says Tesla, or imagine this, it would be a stock from Tesla. And we have here the dates, all for one single month. And then we have here the price, and then here as well the volume of it. Although I want to focus on volume, most important for us will be the date and the price. So let's start work on this. So the first thing what I want to do is I want to get the default code, which is chartjs3.com. Getting started, this specific link here, which you can also find in the description box. Scroll down and then just copy this entire chunk of code here. So we're going to grab this code here. So once we have that, I'm going to paste that all in here, and then I will just cut out this and put it in here, the title. So next I have some additional code prepared, because what we have to do here is to make a connection with the database. So in this case, I have something already here, and I will put this in the comment section below, so you have this code as well. And this is just a basic PDO connection with the database. So I will not explain how this works. You just can copy and paste this one. Let's copy and paste this, put it in here, and of course, by the way, you should have this matching with whatever your database username, password, and database name is. So I'm going to put it here all up. Just paste it all in there. This is just a PHP, so if I save this now, nothing happens, of course. We're not yet connected, but we are now able to access our database. So the next thing what we need to do here is to start working on updating, or at least the data we have here should reflect whatever we would have in our database. So to make this, I'll clean up the database a little bit. Or sorry, not the database, I'll clean up the background color here. We just have only a single item. That's it. We have the colors here. This here needs to be adjusted. So we're going to work on that. But to do this, we need to have first the data coming in from somewhere. So what I'm going to do here is, well, let's see, we can do that somewhere here above. Is basically, or maybe here. I'm just going to say here. It doesn't matter exactly where you put it, as long as you put it before the JavaScript area. This is very important. So then what I'm going to do here is the PHP, and it's the closing tag. I'm going to just go fast in here. So this would be try. This is the attempt to connect with the query and then execute it. And then what we're going to say here, SQL equals, and then here double quotation, and then we're going to say here select asterisk from, meaning basically we're going to select from a database, but with the asterisk meaning we're going to select everything, although we could be very specific, saying only the date and the price. That would be even more better because it reduces the workload on it. But in this case, I'll just say select everything, and we can always adjust this one. But the focus here is to get the data displayed. So what I'm going to say here, from, and then what will be here, the item name here. So in this case, it is Tesla, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to say chartjs.tesla to be very specific. So I'm going to say here, chartjs.tesla as the table. So this is the database name, the database, and the table name within this database is Tesla. Alright, so now we have this, sorry, this should be Tesla, my mistake. So once we have this, here, semicolon, then what I'm going to say here, $sign, I'm going to say here, the result. So what we want to do now is to get the result as a PDO, and this PDO is a query. We get the query, and the query is of course the SQL here, so $SQL. So once we did this, we're going to create an if statement to check if we have any values in here. So we say if $result. So if the result is, then we say row count, we're going to count the rows. And then here basically we're going to say here it should be bigger than 0. The reason why is if there's no row, in that case, there's no value or no value matching with our condition. In this case, we should have here, because our row starts at ID 6, and here there should be a total of 30 items. As you can see here, total of 30. So there should be 30 rows in here. So once we have this, we're going to do now here a while statement, and this while statement is, so if there would be anything, loop through every one of them. So for every row, it's considered a result. We're going to fetch the data of it. So what we're going to do here is to specify what we want to get here. So what do we want? Well, first of all, I indicated we want to have the date and the price. So I want to grab those and I want to display them in an array. So I'm going to say here $. I'm just going to make a date array as a variable, or I guess a variable in PHP. And then we say here equal $. Then we're going to say here for every row, which is this, and the row name would be whatever that column specifically is. In this case, it is column date. So for every date, and of course we're going to do exactly the same. We're going to copy all of this, do it the same for the price. I want to grab here the price of that stock. So we say here as well, price array. Very straightforward. So once we have this, what we want to do next is, let's see here, we're going to say here, unset the result. So we have to undo this eventually. And then what I want to do here is else statement. So once we're done here, no need anymore for this. And then else statement, we could say here, for example, echo, because it would mean this. If we have a row count of larger than 0, do this, else, sorry, no results available. No results in database. So once we have that one, we have this. Finally here, we have our try. The try is connected here, so we have a catch. If ever we would have an error, we will catch that error. And we can say here, PDOE exception or PDO exception. We can show here the error letter E, or as an error, or then that's the variable. And then here we die, or we shut down the connection immediately and just indicate here error, whatever you want to do here. I'll just say error for now. We could even echo out the error message in here, so it doesn't matter. For now, I will just skip that one. That's not important for us. Most important one is here. We have this connection. I do expect this to work. So we have this one here. So if I save this now, of course, nothing happens yet. All right, so unexpected here. All right, I guess I already have a mistake here. So let's see here. We have the unexpected here, or die this one. So what we have to do here is semicolon, save, refresh. All right. So make sure you have semicolon, because PHP is not like JavaScript. PHP is very strict in this. So if I have this here now, right now, nothing truly shows here. So let's start to work on drawing the item, because I was expecting that this should show at least something. Alright, so ironically I got an error here, and after just checking I was thinking what's going on here, and apparently I was putting a Tesla and I didn't even know that apparently my table name is not Tesla. Alright, that's very bad. So anyway, so let's correct that. If I save that, I should expect here now a proper response. Alright, so this works, everything is fine, no more error response below. So now what I want to do here is to start getting the values from our array here. However, when we have these values, you must understand the following. The values here are in PHP, so that would mean that we need to convert them into a JavaScript readable version. So that's what we're going to do right now. So what we're going to say here is, first of all, let's do a constant, and then what we can say here is constant date, or what we could do even here. Let me just do this first. I'm going to do here unset $, PDO to undo the connection. So if I do that, all right, no errors. Then what I could do here is, for example, I can do here a print. So I say print _r, all right, and then here the date array. If I save this now, we should get here a lot of values in total of 30 items, which is correct because you can see here from April 1 all the way to April 30. So this works. This is a confirmation that now this part works, but of course this is PHP readable text, so we need to parse it into JavaScript. And parsing basically means make something readable for. So in this case, from PHP we parse it to JavaScript, meaning from PHP we make it readable for JavaScript. So that's what we're going to do right now. So I'm going to put in here and let's start to work on that. So the first thing here, constant, and I'm going to say here the date array. Then we just make it JavaScript equal, and then we're going to say here PHP echo, and then we're going to do here JSON underscore and code. And then what we're going to do here, the JSON underscore and code, we're going to copy this and put it in here. So it's now becoming a JSON variable, and that will be readable for our JavaScript. So here, semicolon. So if I would do here now something, console log, and just display this, then you will see it becomes now a JSON text. If I refresh here, console log, we have here now an array with the items. But this is very important. JSON is a universal language, but from JSON, JavaScript cannot read that yet. So what we need to do now is we need to make sure that this item is still readable in the right form, or at least what it can read is that this is a date object. This is now considered a string. So we need to make sure it is now properly, because this is just a string, now properly a date object. So what we're going to do now is just very straightforward. We're going to say a constant. We're going to say a date. Let's say Chart.js, very simple. Equal, and then what I want to say here is the following. I want to loop through every one of these items and then convert them into a date object. So to do this, what we need to do here is basically we're going to say here, I'm going to grab this, the date array.js, because that's the converted into JSON encoded code or text string. Then we say a dot map. So we want to loop through every individual value of that. And we're going to rename that. We're going to say this is a day, and then we have, so every individual item is called a day. We rename it to a day, and then we're going to say also we want the index. So that might be sometimes useful. So we're going to put in here the arrow function expression because we're going to loop through them as a callback. And I'm going to say a let. Then we say a day.js. So every day, this will be equal to new date. And then what we want here is the day here. We grab that. There we are. So the next thing what I want to do here is if we can do a console log. We're going to grab here now the day.js and just see what we get. If I save this, refresh, and as you can see here now, we get the date and we're getting here including, or basically the entire date object, including the, I guess the day, the month, the number of it, the year, hours, GMT or Greenwich Mean Time, time zone basically. So you can see here we have everything. So what I want to do here now is I want to make sure, because you can see here it's always +8 because of the GMT +8 in my case, because it's my local time zone here. So what I want to do is I want to reset this, or at least this here, I want to reset that on 12 midnight. That would be 12 a.m. And the reason why I want to do that is if not later on, Chart.js will not read this properly as well in the scales. So we have some work to do here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to convert that now into a proper time of, instead of 8 a.m. in the morning, because it's +8 compared to GMT, we're going to set it on 00. So basically 12 midnight. So to do that, I'm going to say here return, and just grab here the day.js, and then I'm going to say dot set hours. So then we're going to set the hours back on 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. So you might wonder, why do we have 4 zeros instead of here There's only like 3 items here: the hour, the minute, the seconds. Well, in this case, it is the hour, the minute, the seconds, and milliseconds, which is also a part of JavaScript, how they calculate the time. So we have this now. I'm just going to put a semicolon here, and if I now cut this out here, and then maybe we can just convert this properly. I'm going to say this, copy this date.js or date chart.js, save that, and just remove this console log here to avoid all the redundant data. Refresh. Now we get the full time here. This is extremely useful for us because this is the most universal way of calculating time. It just gets us the time in milliseconds based on the date. It's a whole formula, but anyway, doesn't matter so much. We have now the most important information, and now we can start to work with it. So we have this. And then what I want to do here is, because I realized we forgot that, is we need to start converting this into a date object as well. Basically, recognize that this here, the x scale, will be based on the date. However, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to grab this date.js with the set hours, or basically this here. We're going to grab all of this, or more specifically this one here. That will be the one that we eventually need. And then we're going to put it on our labels. So this will be the one. So what we're going to do here, we're going to just delete all of this. I'm going to say here will be this. Alright. And then what I need as well is, of course, the same one here. However, for this one, this will be luckily a bit more easier because we can probably just grab this, copy that, put it in here. And this is an array, so we can just do it without the brackets, if I'm not mistaken. And then we're going to put in here price. Why this doesn't need a whole method compared to like that, or that it can be done immediately? The reason is here we need to convert an item into a date object. And this one, it doesn't need it. So we're going to save this and let's see what happens. Alright, we get something here, but as you can see here, and you can see here the prices of all the stocks, which is correct, it's somewhere in the 11 and all up to 12. If I look here, scroll down here, this is $12. So if I go at the very top, starting is $10.55. So that's correct, $10.55 here, $12 there. However, the time here is still not converted. So I'm going to convert this now. I'm going to use here the FNS date object. So what we're going to do now is we need to get the specific file or the date FNS adapter. So we go to chartjs.org, then you click here on ecosystem. And in ecosystem, we're going to scroll down here, search for the adapters. Now you have 3 options here. I'm going to recommend you to use the date FNS if you don't need to use any modification on it. If you like to use with a modification on it, for example, you need to adjust the date in a way, you can use the Luxon library more, which is a bit more easier compared to that one, or at least for me. So if ever you heard of moments here, this one has been deprecated, meaning it's not being updated since end of 2020. So don't touch this anymore. So one or the other, but if we're only going to add up one specific file, or we're only going to add up the support for the date, go for date FNS, because we won't be doing anything else and only require one JavaScript to load, while Luxon requires 2 JavaScript files. So that's why I'm going to select this one here, scroll down here, and then we're going to look here for the specific file. It's already in here. You can see here the Chartjs adapter date FNS bundle. So copy that one. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go down here, or back here, paste this in here. And once we did this, if we save this, nothing still happens because we didn't activate the date FNS item. So that's what we're going to do here. Now we're going to say comma, and then we're going to say here plugins, and then we're going to put in here, oh sorry, we don't need the plugins, I'm sorry. That's not necessary, but what we need is here on the X. We're going to say here the type, and this type will be now time. So this is basically a new object. This object, it's called time, is supported because of our JavaScript file for the date FNS. So it recognizes this. So within the time, we again have here, we're going to say unit, and the unit will be in this case the day. So I'm going to save this here, refresh, and there we are. So now we're getting the dates in here nicely from April 1 all the way to April 30. Of course, because we have too many items here, it will auto skip values. So we can remove that auto skip false. So let's say here auto skip, and let's do this false, comma, save, refresh. Well, apparently it doesn't work, it just doesn't fit at all. So, or maybe I'm missing something. That's alright. I will look later on in the documentation about this. Let's save that, refresh. There we are. What is more important for us is now to have a selection of starting date, ending date. And that's what we're going to do now. So we're going to go all up here. And let's see, in here, let's say just above the chart box here, or just below the chart box, but above the canvas, we're going to put in a specific input here, and this input type will be equal date, and the date here will be also triggering a functionality on change. So when we change the value, this should be triggered. And then let's say here we will have a start date filter, because we want to filter our values. I'm just going to put in here this as the argument. And once we have this, we have that one. All right, then I want to copy this. I'm going to say another one here, date, and then we say here and filter. And maybe for now, and probably we should move this maybe up and then get the specific value, but it doesn't matter for now. I will not spend too much time on it. I'll just say here value, and then we just say this value will be 2022 April 1. And this will be also our min value. So we will set this as a default value, but also a min value, which is the minimum value that we can have. And then I'm going to copy this. And I'm going to put in here exactly the same, except here will be 30 April. Max value will be 30 here. Well, maybe we can do min and max, doesn't matter here, so we can do both. So this should be max, same here, max, and min will be 1. Alright, so refresh, there we are. So you can see it really restricts us now in clicking it, but now, if I would, for example, select something here, nothing happens yet. Why? We didn't activate these functionalities here. To do that, I'm going to use a trick here, because basically you might say, well, if we're going to use this item in our database, shouldn't we use like Ajax and everything? No need if we can load all of the data immediately. However, only do this if we have, let's say 200, 300 data points. But if we have like 50,000 data points, different story, of course. So scroll down here. And then what we're going to do here is we're going to play here with min value. I'm going to say here, and the min value is also set on 2022 April 1. And what is our max value, comma here, comma again, will be 30. So this is already set on max and min. So if I refresh here, nothing really changes yet. So now we need to work on the function, because the function here should be triggered the moment we select, for example, here, a specific starting date. So I'm going to say here this, or the start date, and we had here the argument of this above. So here will be the parameter, and I'll just say here the date. And then what I'm going to say here for the date here, we're going to say, let's see, we can say here constant. We're going to say start date equals. So what we're really going to do here now is, because the date here must still be converted in a proper structure of a object, date object, because it's still a string, remember, and that we also have to set immediately the time. So what we're going to do here, we can just copy this, or at least new date. We say this equals new date, and then or new date will be date. And then what I'm going to say here is, well, let's do a console log, and we're going to grab here the starting date, save that, refresh, open up developer tab so you can see here the console log. Let's select something. All right, interesting, invalid date. So what we have here, start date will be new date, this, and then we get here invalid date. All right, so let's double check here. What am I missing? The minimum here. All right. I guess I realized that the invalid date is because the structure in HTML is different compared to in JavaScript. So here of the year, so we need to do here the month first. So all right, so we're going to or sorry, not even a month. I think it's day, month, year. So let's convert that back. So we say here, one, there we are. I'm going to just copy this. That's why it's an invalid date. So make sure you pay attention on this, because later on is PHP and JavaScript, the structure is exactly the opposite of what it is in HTML. So we say here this will be, put it back on 30, the minimum, and maximum is 30 here as well. There we are. Save, refresh. Alright, so it does not conform to the format year, date. Alright, let's, there we are, invalid date. Alright. And filter date is not defined. Alright, so let me double check you what's going on. Alright, so sorry about this. I realize I make a very small mistake here. So let's convert them all back to its original state. So apparently HTML just has the same structure as well. So what we did was correct. So this was all correct. So what is the issue here? It's because of this here. This value here refers to the entire input and not on this dot value. So if I scroll down here, this here, the date, is of course nothing more than the entire input. So I need to say this dot value. And that was our big problem, of course. There we are. So now we get everything we need. However, here we have the same issue again with the hours. GMT 8, meaning here now, this is 8 o'clock here. So I want to reset that back into its original state of 000. So how do we do that? Well, basically, I'm going to say here in the start date, we can just copy this chunk of code here. Copy that, set hours. Dot set hours. If I save this now, refresh, select something, now we get the official numbers. Alright, so now we have this, and this is very important because now we can do something else. I want to now adjust this here. So how do we adjust that? So when we have selected a new date, that date will be eventually impacted and updates this minimum here to whatever the date would be. Meaning that what we're going to say here is we're going to update something. We're going to say my chart dot. Then we're going here to config, because basically it's from my chart to config, and then from config we go to options. From options, scales, X, and then from option we say options dot scales dot X dot, and then we're going to say a min. And the min here will be whatever this date is, including the set hours. We want to put it back into its original shape of hours, which is midnight. Then what I want to do is I want to make sure that we update this. So what we're going to say here is my chart dot update. Save this, refresh. Now if I should select something, it should work nicely. As you can see here, 30 April matching 30 April. Go back here, 27 April matching 11 April, beautiful. Now this one is still not working because we don't have an end date filter. So what I'm going to do is, you already guessed it, we're just going to duplicate the entire item. Put it in there, and enter. This will be our end date, that is proper. Put it on end date. And here we have the min will be converted into maximum value, and that will be of course our end date here. So here, what was the start date filter, and if I'm not mistaken was the end date filter. Let's scroll up here to search. This is the end date filter, copy that. And put it in here. Save that, refresh, and now we should have, with our database connected nicely, all the items. We are now on 5 April, and let's put this back on 26 April, there we are. Let's do this here on 11 April, and then we go back here, we put on 22, alright, and now we say we want to go back to 30. There we are. So this is basically the way how you can play around with the dates without straining too much your database if you have a limited amount of data points. If you have everything below 1000, it should be more than enough to use it immediately like this. So if you enjoyed this, and maybe if you have a database, this is a very common issue, that you have a database where the date structure is completely different, I'm going to recommend you a different video in that case as an add-on to explore. For example, here, this one is on how to use different date formats in Chart.js if your database consists of different formats, so that you have to convert them and make sure that they're readable for Chart.js. So that's a highly recommended item if you experience this kind of cases.